How are you feeling?
Thank you, Sophie. I'm feeling like I'm in a bit of a movie, to be honest, because it was a bit surreal sitting on my sofa for the first time after 6 days of being in bed, being, given the honour and the privilege of becoming the deputy leader of the Labour Party, which is a historic party for me that has done so much to help me certainly get on in life, and then seeing that, but actually just being physically locked down in my room and nothing changing around me. So it was very strange and surreal.
And you believe that you have had COVID-19. How has it hit you? Because we know, of course, it affects different people in different ways.
Oh yeah, I mean, if I haven't had it, it's definite cousin, because it is the symptoms I've had have been very much consistent with what the government and the World Health Organisation have said you get. I had a dry throat to begin with, and then I come down with a temperature, which my temperature was around 39, which is very high, and I had a headache. I felt very unwell, and the fatigue, I cannot describe the fatigue. I'm normally a very healthy, hyperactive person. I only sleep a few hours at night, but I was literally floored and in my bed and breathless. It felt like I'd ran upstairs, even though I'd not actually physically moved anywhere. So it was very debilitating, and the government's right to give the advice that we should stay at home where possible and protect people from this virus, because it is incredibly difficult. And we know that there's been people that have lost lives, and even fit and healthy people. So we should all take the warnings that the government have given us.
We heard from Matt Hancock earlier on the programme. I think he was very strong, saying that sunbathing was against the rules, that it was unbelievable to see a minority of people breaking the lockdown. You on the Matt Hancock side of the argument, or do you have a bit more sympathy for people who might be in crowded accommodation with a couple of kids wanting to catch a few rays?
Well, it's all right for people who have got big houses and huge back gardens to say that, but actually, if you're stuck at inadequate accommodation, you've got no back garden, you've got nowhere to go, and you're all on top of each other, quite literally, then I think people should do social distancing and should keep their distance, but also be reasonable and proportionate about that. I'm disappointed that Matt Hancock, after 7 days of having the virus, went out when the World Health Organisation have said that you should self-isolate for 14 days. I'm going to exercise that, and I think it's right that we do that, because I cannot stress enough the severity of the symptoms that I've suffered. As you can tell by how breathless I am still now, and I'm day 9, day 10. So I think the government really need to give that clarity and continue to support people doing the right thing. And there's a number of concerns I have around that. We still don't have the protective equipment for our frontline staff. We still have problems making sure that businesses can do the right thing, and that employees can do the right thing and be off. Statutory sick pay is not adequate enough, and we're not testing, nowhere near testing enough, and it's a blunt tool to keep us all at home, and that's not going to be able to continue long term. So therefore the government has to start testing and making sure that we're tracking this virus and tracing it, and doing what the World Health Organisation and other countries that are successful in getting rid of this virus. We've got to lead and make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Keir Starmer has said that Labour is going to engage constructively with the government on this. He's already agreed to a meeting, or virtual meeting if you like, with Boris Johnson. But it's quite a contrast with what Jeremy Corbyn said a few days ago, which is it's the duty of opposition parties to hold the government to account. If everybody got together and said we're all absolutely in this together, that's a negation of what our democratic society is about. So who do you think is right there?
I think they both have some very valid points, and I don't think it was conflicting. What Keir Starmer said, and he's absolutely right, is that we should work constructively in the national interest. This is an extraordinary time of crisis, and I understand that, and I understand the difficulties that the government have. But we are in opposition, and there are things that the government, I believe, are getting wrong, like testing. They've gone against what the international world are doing, and there's questions about that, and the government have to be open and honest about that, because the public have put a huge amount of trust in them. And we will work constructively with the government, because we've got the same aim of saving lives and getting back to normal as soon as we possibly can. But also, we've got this absolute responsibility to push the government where we think they're not doing things correctly, and we'll do that constructively. And I think that's our role over these next couple of weeks, is to set out our vision, to listen to the public, to earn their trust and respect back as a political party, but also to work with the government where we can, but also highlight where we think the government's failing. And it's failing at the moment, in particular, on testing, on protecting our frontline staff, and giving businesses and employees the opportunity to do the right thing when they're asking them to self-isolate.
Now, I want to ask you a little bit about the future of the Labour Party looking forward. You, of course, just become the new deputy leader, Keir Starmer becoming the new leader. He said of Labour, we will change. But, of course, saying that the party needs to change is the easy bit, really. Working out how it needs to change is the more complicated part of that. So how do you think that Labour needs to change?
Well, I think it's been, first of all, we have to listen to our voters. We can't just turn inwards on each other and talk to ourselves. Yes, we are one of the largest parties in Europe, but we've also got to listen to what people are saying to us and do the right thing by them. They didn't trust us. They thought that we didn't deal with anti-Semitism. We've let down the Jewish community on that. We've got to earn the trust and respect back on the issue. But I also think on a number of other issues, they wasn't convinced. And, the world is changing around us now. A lot of the policies that Jeremy Corbyn advocated, the government are having to push in. We've seen the inadequacies in terms of the funding for social care and for our NHS and our public services and for our welfare state. So many people are falling through the net at the moment, and the government have to start now implementing some of the things that Jeremy Corbyn advocated. So I don't think it's Jeremy Corbyn versus Keir Starmer. It's about our Labour values and making sure that we look after everyone in society, which is what our priority should be now.
Just before we spoke to you, we also talked to Alan Johnson, the former Health Secretary, who didn't really hold back in his assessment of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. Dreadful and awful is what he said. And he also said that Labour needs to get rid of the cult. I think he was referring to momentum there. Is he right?
I think Labour need to get away from any form of, putting people in factional boxes. Blairism, Corbynism, Brownism, all of that has to go. We're a Labour family, and families have difference of opinions, and I agree with Alan on that we do have constructive disagreements at times, but that should be welcomed in our party, that people can agree to disagree, but also that we move forward as a collective with our same aims and values. And I think Jeremy Corbyn really took the party forward. He talked about anti-austerity, he talked about investing in our public services, which this government is having to do now. So I think he was right to do that. And I think we owe Jeremy a debt of gratitude with that. But we've also got to recognise that our failings, and we failed at the last general election, but we failed for 4 general elections. We've not won a general election for a very long time. So therefore, we've got to listen to the voters and we've got to earn their respect back. And I want to do that. And I'm sure that under Keir's leadership, working with all of our political movement, we can do that together.
OK, now we are running out of time, so just a quick one from you, please. We'll be seeing the new Shadow Cabinet drawn up quite soon. You're hoping to hang on to your role as Shadow Education Secretary?
Well, I mean, Keir hasn't offered any jobs to anyone yet, and I'm sure Keir will draw on every single talent that we have. I've been immensely proud to serve Jeremy Corbyn as the Shadow Education Secretary and to develop a national education service. I'm committed, even as deputy leader, to make sure that happens in whatever guise that is, because I think it's important that we have that, and I hope that that will be Jeremy's legacy when we go into government. And I'm sure Keir will make sure all talents are in our shadow cabinet, and I think that it's time now for us to come together to get the best of the best out there on the front foot, working constructively where possible with the government, but pushing forward to end this coronavirus crisis as soon as possible and get life working again for people of this country.
And then just finally, you backed your friend and flatmate, Rebecca Long-Bailey, for the leadership. Were you disappointed that she lost, and have you spoken since? Maybe a quick chat over Zoom or something?
Well, yesterday was incredibly challenging for me because I was still feeling very unwell and had lots to do. And today is my first day really that I've been up and out. And I want to thank everyone for their good wishes throughout this process. But I think Rebecca Long-Bailey has a huge amount to offer the party. I'm incredibly proud of her. And I'm incredibly proud to be honoured and given the privilege to serve under Keir Starmer as the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. And I want to prove to everyone that I can do that and I can get us into government.